Today we have news from BMW, and it's especially good news because they just revealed the new 2026 BMW R1300 RS, successor to a motorcycle that we've spent some time with, which was the BMW R1250 RS. And that previous model was one of my personal favorite motorcycles that we've ever gotten to test, because it was just a fantastic blend of being comfortable, sophisticated, and still a fun bike to ride aggressively. So this is a sport touring motorcycle, this new R1300 RS. BMW has also shown off at the same time a new R1300 RT, but this RS I find especially appealing. And one of the main things that they've updated on this bike, as you could probably tell from the name, is the engine. So we've got a new 1300cc Boxer instead of the old 1254cc engine, and now 145 horsepower, 110 pound-feet of torque instead of 136 horsepower and 105 pound-feet of torque in the old bike. Those were not bad power figures whatsoever, but still a pretty nice power bump for this admittedly very big motorcycle, and a relatively heavy one, although it's worth talking about some of the weight reduction they've done in a few areas on this. So this new 6-speed transmission especially, they've made lighter, and in all, the power unit, the engine and transmission combo, is about 14 pounds lighter than it used to be. They also shaved around 3 pounds out of the 17-inch front and rear wheels on the bike, both of which are great things, especially reducing some unsprung weight. That being said, the motorcycle is still about 540 pounds, so this is still a hefty bike tipping the scales at over 500 pounds. And the previous R1250 RS was also around that weight, around 536 pounds. So this bike is not any lighter than the old model, but having some of that weight reduction in the wheels and the extra power, I wouldn't be surprised if the bike not only doesn't feel any heavier, but maybe even feels like it handles its weight a little bit better. For the engine, for the powertrain, there's going to be a few different riding modes, and that can even go as far as to adjust not only some of your riding aids, but also suspension, depending on how you spec out the bike. Initially, if you just get a base model, you'll have Rain, Road, and Eco, but you can do the Ride Modes Pro that get you the dynamic riding modes, things that you can go in and adjust a little bit. They've also updated the steel frame on this motorcycle, so some changes underneath as well as changes to the bodywork that you can see from the outside. And they've also played around with the ergonomics on this bike a little bit. One of the things that I liked so much about the R1250 RS in the past is that it gave you a great combination of a motorcycle that you could pretty comfortably ride for longer distances, but if you wanted to get more aggressive and ride it quickly, it could do both shockingly well. And this motorcycle, to me, is especially a direct lineage from the old Airhead Boxer BMW Sport Tours of the past. Classic motorcycles that gave BMW part of the reputation that it has today. And a bike like this feels like the direct lineage past some of those old Airheads. They're really great motorcycles to ride in any kind of circumstances. So they've revised the ergonomics a little bit. They say they've made them slightly more aggressive, slightly more performance oriented. So stretching you out further over the tank, making the handlebars a little bit wider. But in BMW's true fashion, there are a lot of different accessory parts that you can get. So there's a comfort style handlebar you can option that will make the bike a little bit less aggressive in your riding position. Same thing with the foot pegs. Some of the controls, like your levers, are also adjustable as the bike comes from the factory. And there's multiple different seats that you can get. And the seat height on these are typically going to be around 31.1 inches, but it depends on what seat you spec. If you get a sport seat, it'll set you up a little bit higher. There's also a comfort seat option. You can get heated rider seat and passenger seat on this bike as well. So there's a lot of different ways you can configure these motorcycles. And when you do so, you can crank up the price quite a bit, I'm sure. I haven't seen the prices on all of the packages for this motorcycle, but certainly in the previous bike, the R1250 RS, you could really inflate the cost of the bike. And we'll talk about the starting price in just a moment. 4.5 gallon fuel tank, so a decent amount of fuel to be able to do longer rides and longer trips. The bike also has some revised suspension, so it's a new updated 47 millimeter set of forks. They've also revised the paralever rear suspension. We've got twin 310 millimeter discs for the brakes up front and a 285 millimeter disc in the rear. Of course, it comes standard with traction control, ABS, and a lot of the tech that you would expect, but there is quite a bit of tech that you can option. So there's a 6.5-inch TFT. It's a nice quality screen and everything, but you can option the bike with electronically controlled suspension. These can also have active cruise control and even forward collision warning. And an interesting new tech feature that we saw on the R1300 GS, and this is automatic shift assistant. They're abbreviating it to ASA. And what that is an automation for the shifting and clutch operation. You can put it into a manual mode where you use your foot to select when the gears change. But if you spec the bike that way, you don't have a clutch lever. So it's not like Honda's system they came out with relatively recently, where you can still maintain the clutch lever and ride the bike as completely normal, even have the ability to stall the motorcycle, so ride it fully manually, or select an automated mode where it will actually go through the gears and clutch for you. This is different. If you get this ASA system, then you won't have a clutch lever. So that would be a sacrifice that you would have to decide whether or not you want to make. If I was speccing out this bike for myself, I would keep it just regular manual as the R1250 RS we tested was set up in the past, because that's just, to me, a more fun way to do it. Now, again, more configurability on this bike. You can set it up to be a slightly more touring-focused machine, so you can get a slightly bigger windshield. You can get side cases for the rear with a decent amount of storage. You can get tank storage. But you can also spec out the bike to be a little bit more aggressive. So they've got what they're calling a performance variant that goes in and makes some changes to tires, brakes, suspension, and a ton of other elements on the motorcycle to make it a little bit more aggressive. The suspension is even raised a little bit so that you've got more lean angle that you can take advantage of. So quite a few different ways you can spec out the motorcycle, although I do kind of wish that they had some more color options. As far as colors go, it's mostly pretty simple. They have black and they have gray. So they've got two options that, aren't really so colorful. There you can see the gray model. Not bad looking. They do infuse a little bit of color and graphics into the bodywork, so it's not just plain gray. But compared to other bikes out there, it's a little bit on the plain side. They've also got a dark blue that you can get on the exterior, which is not bad looking. It says R1300 RS on the side. Not too bad. My personal favorite is the white with BMW's racing colors. I think that gives the bike the most aggressive appearance, and it's got the most going on. So I think that adds maybe a little bit of excitement to the look of the bike. So definitely quite a few different ways that you can spec out the bike. Not as much in the colors, but certainly on some of the accessories and parts that you can put on this bike to really suit it to exactly how you're going to ride, also your size, shape, and preferences to make this a great motorcycle to ride. And it's, once again, I just can't say enough, because there's a few things that I can say about this bike are maybe not perfect, just so that we're not overly positive, because I have a glowing opinion of this motorcycle in general, but it is expensive. And I don't think it's a bad looking bike. I also don't think it's the most beautiful bike that's out there on the market. But as far as how this motorcycle rides, if you've been riding for a while and you're okay with throwing a leg over a slightly heavier bike, even if you're not a big sport touring type of rider, you owe it to yourself at some point to throw a leg over one of these, whether it's the R1250 RS that's been replaced or it's this new bike if you get the opportunity to ride one. It's really an incredible riding experience. It's one that made me want to just be on my toes, ride as well as I possibly could. It made me want to be a better rider. Being in the proper riding position, riding it aggressively, it made me want to seek out some twisty roads and ride the bike hard. But this was also a motorcycle that absolutely you could take it down the highway, be relatively comfortable, not have too much pressure on your lower back by being leaned way far forward. It'll be interesting to see how the revised ergonomics impact that a little bit, because I really like the ergonomics on the R1250 RS, and I'm sure it will be more or less the same on this. But like I said, you could go in and make some adjustments to that. Now, without any further stalling, the price on this bike is $16,995. So basically 17 grand. It's definitely an expensive motorcycle to start with, which makes sense. It's a big bike, it's powerful, and it comes with a lot of tech as is. But if you start optioning things like the Headlight Pro that gets you cornering lights, and a Ride Mode Pro that gets you those extra riding modes, and you do the performance package and you get some extra luggage and you do this, that, and the other, then you can really inflate those prices pretty high. I don't remember exactly what the price on the R1250 RS that I tested in the past was, but I remember it was quite a bit more than that starting price, well into the $20,000 range. I'm sure this will be the same way. So if you really go crazy with options, you could pump up that cost quite a bit. But the $17,000 base model of this bike still comes with quite a bit of content and features. So it's not necessarily something that you need to do. If you just end up with the bog standard version of the motorcycle, you'll end up with a really great bike, as you should for $17,000, because it's not inexpensive by any means. And these bikes should be becoming available toward the end of the third quarter of this year or in the fourth quarter of this year. So a little bit around the corner, and it's one that I'm going to be really excited to see in dealerships. One that I hope we get an opportunity again to spend some time with and ride, because a lot of times when we get motorcycles here at the office, I test them here at the office, I ride them during work when I'm on the clock, but it's not that often that I leave one of my vehicles or one of my motorcycles here at the office in order to take a bike home. But I had done that in the past with the R1250 RS. This is such a nice riding bike. It's one of the only times that I've left one of my machines that I love here to take that home instead. And it would be much the same with this bike, I'm sure, because it's just great to ride. So let me know what you think in the comments below. I also want to say a quick thanks to Scott and the team over at Rider Justice. We've been working with them for years and years, since basically our motorcycle channel started, because Scott and the team over there, they're really easy to work with. So whether you're on 2 wheels or 4, if you're ever in an incident and you need legal representation, make sure you call Scott first, because they're awesome, the team over there, and they actually really care about the people that they work with. That's why they've been working with us for such a long time, and that's why we keep signing up to continue working with them. So that's all for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have an R1250 RS, do you think you would upgrade to this R1300? I don't know if there's enough difference between the bikes to make it worth the upgrade, because that R1250, again, is already a pretty good bike. Maybe there's going to be some deals on the R1250s and I'll be able to afford one. That's all, and we'll see you in the next video.